Welcome back. We're looking at 1.4 day 2. We're continuing problem solving with equations. We'll start off with example 1 where it says at 11:30 a.m. two planes leave Grand Rapids, one flying east at 600 kilometers per hour and the other flying west at 500 kilometers per hour. At what time will they be 2,475 kilometers apart? So when we're doing this, what I always like to think about is, okay, if one's moving 600 in one direction, the other one's moving 500 in the other, like how quickly are they moving away from each other, right? So if you got this guy's moving 500, this one's moving 600 this way, right? Because they're direct opposites of each other, we can just add them together and get that they're moving apart at a speed of 1,100 kilometers per hour. So then I want to know how many hours is it going to take and eventually then what time, right, it is for them to be 2,475 hours or kilometers apart. So if we divide these both by 1,100, we get that x equals 2.25 hours. Now that's not 2 hours 25 minutes, right? That's 2 hours or 2.25 or 2.25 hours. So how do we determine then how many minutes that would be? Well, there's 60 minutes in an hour, so if we multiply it by the 0.25, that will give us that there are 15 minutes there. So this is really 2 hours 15 minutes that it will take them to be 2,475 kilometers apart. So if they left at 11:30 a.m. and we add to it 2 hours and 15 minutes, that is going to give us 13:45. Well, most of us don't live our lives in military time, so we would have to subtract 12 from that to figure out what time it is, which would be 1:45 p.m. as our final answer. Example number 2 looks at a jar that contains 60 coins. It only has dimes and quarters, and their total value has to be $9. So we're looking at how many of each kind of coin are there. So if I want to identify, so I have dimes and quarters. If I want to identify my dimes as X, right, then if I want to know how many quarters there are, I just take the total number, which is 60, and subtract the number of dimes, and that will tell me how many I have. So just 60 minus X. We have to remember that a dime is worth $0.10 and a quarter is worth $0.25. So when I take 10 cents or $0.10 for each dime and I add it to 0.25 or 25 cents for every quarter, I know that that's going to have to add up to $9. So I can distribute this 0.25, so 0.10x plus 0.25 times 60 gives me 15, and then 0.25 times the negative x is a negative 0.25x, has to equal $9. I can subtract 15 from both sides. That gives me a negative $6 on the right side of my equation, and on the left side I have 0.10x and negative 0.25x, leaves a negative 0.15x, right? But that's good that we have a negative on both sides, because then we know that they'll cancel each other out, and since we can't have a negative number of dimes, we know that we're in the right direction. So we can divide both sides by a negative 1 or 0.15, and then that gives us that x equals 40. So for our dimes, we have 40, and our quarters, right, we have 20, and that's because that 60 minus 40 gives us that 20. So that would be our final answer. Number 3 moves on and talks about investments. As a man invests $6,000 as part of a 5% simple interest rate, and then the rest of his $6,000 he invests at 7%, and that his annual interest comes in at $372. So how much do you invest at each rate? So again, we have the same situation, right? We have a 5% and we have a 7%. If he invests X at 5%, to find out how much he invests at 7%, we just take the $6,000 total and subtract what it was that he invested at 5%. Now we do have to remember that 5% is 0.05 and 7% is 0.07. So now if I take the 0.05% he earns on his X plus the 0.07% he earns on the rest, which is 6,000 minus X, we know that those have to add up to a total of $372. So this is 0.05X plus distributing this through, that would be 420 minus 0.07X equals 372. So if we subtract 420 from both sides, okay, that gives us negative 48 on our right-hand side. And on our left-hand side, we have this positive 0.05x. We have this negative 0.07x. So if we have positive 0.05 minus 0.07 leaves us a negative 0.02x. Again, both negatives, good sign. Divide both sides by negative 0.02, and we get that x equals 2,400. So if we look back, that means that at 5%, we had $2,400. And then at 7%, right, we have 6,000 minus 2,400, or $3,600. And last but not least, we have one of my favorite example problems. We have a jar contains 50 coins for a total value of $6.50. There are 3 times as many nickels as dimes. How many quarters are there? So from the way it's written, you can tell that there are nickels, there are dimes, and there are quarters. There are 3 times as many nickels as there are dimes. So that means that our dimes is where we have to start at X. Okay, that's worth 0.10 as we talked about earlier. We have 3 times as many nickels. So for nickels, we have 3 times as many, or 3x. Those are each worth 0.05. Now when it comes time to our quarters, which we're asked about, right, so we now know that they're in there. If you take the total number of coins, which is 50, and subtract out the 3x from your nickels and the x from your dimes, it'll tell you how many quarters you have. So if you have minus 3x minus x, that's really just the same as 50 minus 4x. And a quarter, as we talked about earlier, is worth $0.25. So if I add in the 0.10 for each dime, and then my 0.05 for each nickel, and my 0.25 for each quarter, that has to add up to a total of $6.50 because that's the total value in the jar. So I just have to go through and distribute where necessary. So 0.10x plus 0.15x by multiplying through, plus 0.25 times 50 is 1250. 0.25 times a negative 4 would just be a negative x, because negative x is the same as a negative 1x, and then that would equal $6.50. Now I'm going to subtract 1250 out of the way to get it to the other side, and my right-hand side is at a negative $6. On the left-hand side, these first two, I'm just going to quick combine them. 0.10 with 0.15 is 0.25x, and I'm left with minus x equals the negative $6. So if I have 0.25 or 1/4 of x, but then I'm subtracting a whole one away, that leaves me with a negative 0.75x to equal that negative $6. So then we just divide both sides by the negative 0.75. And when we do that, we get x equals 8. Now the problem asks for how many quarters are there. Well, quarters are 50 times 4x. So 50 minus 4x. So 50 minus 4 times 8. Or 50 minus 32, which gives us a total of 18 quarters. Hopefully that helps you out with those. If you have any more questions, feel free to shoot me a message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Have a great day, guys.